Good morning, welcome back. I'm pleased now on the Agile side of the conference to welcome Bob Galen of Cary, North Carolina. Bob tells me he has y'all pretty much down pat. Maybe you can give lessons to Linda. By day, he's Director of R&D and Agile Coach at iContact. By night, he's a passionate Agilist, active in helping the community. He likes cheesecake, reading, quiet walks on the beach, and product ownership. I've known Bob for a long, long time. He's a great contributor to our conferences. Please welcome Bob Galen.
Thank you, sir. Fantastic. How you all doing this morning? You all doing okay? All right, good. I want to tell a little story. I'm lucky I'm here, and so I want to really thank Lee for having me. So he called me, he reached out to me to offer me a keynote, and as associated with a keynote presentation, I'm not the best writer in the world, so you have to write one of those little snippets. Everyone familiar with those snippets that describe the talks? And I get really full of myself, and I send back one, and I'm like, here's a title. So they come in separates. It's the title for the talk, and then there's the body. And it has a word limit. It's somewhere between, I think, Lee, 150 and 175. So I boldly and courageously threw a title and threw what I thought was a great outline, and I threw it over to Lee. And he kicked it back, and it's like 67 words. Bob, can't you use word count? I was appalled. I'm like, oh no. I was so honored to be invited to a keynote, and I'm like, crap, I blew it. So we bounced it back. How many times do you think we bounced this back and forth? Take a guess. About 5, very good guess. It's about 8 or 9 or 10, I think. I think he lost patience with me around the 5th or 6th try, which is very uncommon for Lee. And I'm like, I double crap. I was like, crap, I'm not gonna, God, he's gonna kick me out. I couldn't, it's not even that I can't do a keynote. I couldn't even do what? I couldn't even get like the 150 words in as the price of admission. But he was incredibly patient with me, and I made it through the door. So I wanna thank you all for coming today. And hopefully the content, hopefully I have a better time with the content for the talk than I did with the overview for the talk. So I want to dive in. I want to talk about the role of the product owner. And let me go back to the title. It's partnering with the team is, I think, a key thing, a key aspect that I want to share on. A few years ago, I wrote a book called Scrum Product Ownership, Balancing Value from the Inside Out. And I felt very strongly about the inside out in the subtitle, and that was being team focused. I saw a lot of product owners. What inspired me to write the book were a lot of product owners were facing externally towards the customer, and the customer is really important, but they were looking outside first to the business, to the CEO, to the C-level folks, and they weren't looking inside enough and tidying their team. And then the results weren't meeting what the C-level folks were desired. So they were imbalanced. And I feel very strongly that this PO role, this product owner, this craft of product ownership, that it's a really hard balancing act, and you have to get it right. And I think it really starts with the team first. And that may be counterintuitive at times, because the business is putting so much pressure on these folks. And they are. It's a hard job, and they do a tremendous job. So the business is putting this pressure, but you have to sustain against that pressure and balance into your team. And that's really this partnership the evolution from that book is I want to amplify that partnership and how important I think it is for effectivity to be an essential product owner. And that's not just to be soft with the team and squishy with the team. That's to drive business results. That's to drive value. That's how you drive value. So when I say product owner, I use Scrum terms a lot in my talks, and I'm not really, that's just my experience base. I try not to be too stuck on Scrum. We use a variety of methods at iContact, but I tend to use Scrum terminology a lot because it works for me. So when I say product owner, don't get stuck. You don't have to be in Scrum or using Scrum. I mean customer. I overload it. It could be business analyst, it could be stakeholder, it could be product manager. It could be a requirements provider. It actually could be all of those things sort of wrapped up. It could be multiple individuals. So anyone sort of tasked with interpreting the business climate and feeding their team well with a backlog, feeding their team well with prioritized work to do. That's sort of the essence of the role. The other thing for the audience, one of the things Lee and I were talking about when I was getting my words ready, he says, like, I wonder if this is going to be a general purpose workshop or not. Is it going to be just how many product owners are there in the world? He's like, you might only have 3 product owners in the room. It may not have wide enough appeal. And I said, I hope we're not so narrow. I said, I think the craft of product ownership sort of touches other members of Agile teams. I think it touches Scrum Masters, it touches testers, it touches BAs, it touches the team themselves. I think there's this shared view of product ownership rather than product owner. I think we should start morphing our view towards from owner to ownership as a team behavior. So I'm trying to apply a whole team view where the entire team sort of collaborates on the work, elaborates stories together, delivers on quality, delivers on value. Now, I'm not implying that there isn't a strong voice, there isn't a strong, decisive, singular voice that's driving the product, and that is that product owner role. So it's not groupthink around driving it, but it is a group and a collaborative exercise around contributing to the vision, around contributing to the backlog. And I hope that comes through. So it should be Agile methodology agnostic, I hope, and product owners and not product owner centric. The thing we're going to do, I want to share this morning, is I want to talk about simple patterns. The format of this talk is going to be simple patterns, what I think of as the good, and they indeed are good. So I'm not couching it that they're terrible. I think they're good patterns, but I want to talk about taking good patterns and moving them to essential patterns, or what I think are as great patterns. And I want to sort of share some stories from the trenches that illustrate that. So we're going to take a pattern focus of good and then great, and I'm maybe little g great. Don't just really, really solid sort of extra effort practices that I want you to focus on. The first one I want to talk about is the notion of, is there one product owner? Is there one person who has it strapped to their back and is burdened down with all of the aspects of the role? I think the methodologies sometimes have that view of there's a product owner, they own prioritization, they own the view of the business, and they're tasked with all of the work around the backlog, all of the work around business interpretation, all the work around customer surrogates and figuring out where the business is going and representing the team. And I don't like that view. Now, I'm not saying everyone has an equal voice, and when you're breaking ties, you need a singular product owner who's breaking ties, who's providing vision, and who's setting that direction with the team. But I think strongly that it takes a village to own the backlog. And part of who are the constituents? Who can own the backlog? I think the product organization. So I'd like to start with above the individual product owner. I think there's, in a large, at-scale Agile instance, I think there's an organizational dynamic, like who does the product owner report to? Do they report to an organization of product management? So I think that organization needs to help them as well. They need external help and support. Let's say you have a very large Scrum instance. I want to have like meta backlogs. I want to have roadmaps. I want to see things that are guiding multiple teams. I want to see that support filtering down for that individual product owner. So the organizational itself, I think, is really important. Stakeholders become important. They're important participants. They need to get in the game. And I think the better model for getting in the game is sort of partnership as opposed to, I'm just simply a customer, a stakeholder. I tell the product owner what I want, and then it's their job to figure it out from there. I just shoot them an email, and they'll figure everything out. Business analysts and testers play a wonderful role, I think, in augmenting product ownership and helping craft great stories, user stories, crafting great views, crafting sign-off, what acceptance looks like. And then the programmers, the team, the Scrum Master, absolutely, I think, help create that shared view. So what do they do? This team, this village, I think they're active in sprint reviews. The product owner itself sits with the team. They get out of their desk. They sit with the team. At Eye Contact, we're pretty pleased that our product owners normally typically sit with the team. They used to. We've just reorganized a little bit, and they used to sit directly with their teams. And we got great benefit out of that. We got great collaboration out of that. And that doesn't mean they sat there, 8 hours a day permanently and they were chained to their team. They had external work to do, but they were engaged. They could hear someone cry in pain, and they knew that a story was in jeopardy. They could hear someone squeal in the team in delight, and they knew that they might be ahead of the game a little bit for another story. But they could viscerally feel what was going on in the team, and they could make those adjustments with the team. They could create a tester, and a developer could pull them over and show them a story in execution, and they could get a feeling. We could provide adjustments on the fly. So I think that's part of that injection and influence point. They have the courage. I think product owners in this village model, and the village itself needs to have the courage to tell truth to each other. So, not to blow smoke at the team if the story isn't what you want, to say, clearly, that's not what I want. You blew it. We need to provide corrective action here. Or for the team to push on the product owner. If the product owner is pushing too hard on them, is setting expectations too high, and they're short shrifting quality at a team level, the team will talk truth or speak truth to the product owner and say, stop that, right? Push back a little bit, and the product owner will listen to the team. So there's this notion of courage and leadership, and I think speaking truth to each other to load balance the team. Clearly, the product owner is emphasizing those agile tenets of working code. It's not just working code, but it's reviewed. They need to emphasize the quality attributes of it. So ask questions around, was that unit tested? Did we do a code review of that code? And not just care about the delivery, but care about the quality of what the team is doing. A solid product owner, or part of product ownership, I think, is fostering this view of quality. We don't just care about delivery, we don't just care about value, we care about that. But we also care about how we get there. We care about the execution dynamics. Is it high quality stuff? Did the team short shrift it or not? And we don't want to foster that. And I think that's an important part of the questions. And you can do that dynamically by the questions you ask to the team. Another important part is creating that shared vision and visioning in the team. So I'm trying to create a view. I think it's really important to have this view of a village. It's an empowered village. It's a dynamic village. It's not a village that says this is my job and that's your job, and we don't collaborate. And if I don't have a clear story, I point the finger at the product owner, and I'm waiting for the product owner to redefine that story, and I'm blocked. We don't have that view. We have a collaborative view. Another thing that I think is really important, and I get a lot of debate. I've gotten debate at this conference. And I like that. I think it's a really healthy debate. But I'm a strong proponent of goals, of setting sprint goals. I think of terms of user story acceptance criteria as being goals at a story level. I think of doneness criteria as being goals at a work product level. I think if you're doing release planning for your work, if you're setting up multiple sprints and you're identifying a goal for a release, I think release goals are really crucial. And folks back at Eye Contact probably are tired of hearing me talking repetitively about goals and driving ourselves with goals and multi-level goals. I know folks here were getting tired of it. But I think there's a simple pattern of defining a sprint goal, and I'm not really caring about it. It's by rote. Just throw it out there. But I think leading with goals is the more essential pattern. Making goal setting and envisioning an important part of product ownership at a team level. And so you're leading with them. It's one of the first things you do. You set release goals if you're doing release planning. You set sprint goals. You set feature acceptance. You invest in acceptance criteria or acceptance tests at a story level. I think it requires extra work. I coach a lot, and I get around and I look at stories. People send me backlogs because I wrote a book on product ownership. Backlogs show up in my email quite often. It's like, take a look at this one. Is it good or is it not good? And I'm almost frozen to try to not say anything. I don't want to judge. I don't want to judge the backlogs. But one of the things I look at is acceptance tests. at a story basis, and how well defined are they and how pervasive. So what is the investment that the team is making in acceptance tests? What is the investment that the teams are making, that team is making in crafting well-defined stories? What is the size of them? Are they sized properly? You all understand that. But I think it's really important to invest time there. One of my observations, it's really easy to short shrift acceptance tests. You can craft good stories, but it's sort of extra work to do well-defined acceptance tests. And I think having this view, the product owner can foster, and ownership can foster this environment where this stuff is important, where you want to invest in really nice, clear, well-defined, testable acceptance tests. And then you do that over features and stories and tasks and value-driven. Another important part, I don't talk about it in this talk so much, but it's chartering. How many people understand, well, if I said project charter, if I said that term, how many people would understand what I meant? A lot of hands go up. Someone shout out some of the attributes of a project charter. What are some of the characteristics of a charter? Anyone? Anyone? Visions. I would buy that. So vision is part of that. Anything else? Clear goals. Clear goals. Anyone else? So clear goals, vision. Compelling. So energized, so we're embellishing a little bit. I would. It gets my blood flowing. It gets the energy. To me, a charter should energize the team. Anything else out there? Come on. Timeline. I think typically you see things like timelines. You see things, I'll help. I'm not getting a lot of contribution. Risks. You see timelines. You see dependencies. You see approaches. You see budget. You see things that lay the groundwork for an effort we're about to embark on. And that's a traditional project. Very often it's tied to approval. We provide a project charter and maybe there's a business case associated with it. Then we have the notion of approval or a sign-off. And I think that the nature of that, the envisioning nature of that, forget the budgeting, forget maybe the waterfall-esque parts of that, but the envisioning parts of that, the energy parts of that, how do we measure success at the end? How do we know what we've hit? How do we know that we're done? That stuff I think is really crucial, and it can come out of chartering, and it's very, very important. So I want to talk about some goal setting stories. So one story, and I use names here, but I won't use companies. So I won't use Michael's, but these are real people, and these are real stories. But I won't use companies and I won't use names, and hopefully no one can read between the lines. Hopefully they're ambiguous. But there's a survival goal. I worked with a startup a few years ago, or more than a few years ago, an entrepreneurial startup. They were working on a new tool to do some software metrics, to collect things from developers' desktops. It was quite novel at the time. And they wanted to drive, they wanted to go to a demo, an event to get venture capital. So they were fortunate enough to be invited to this demonstration event where you got 7 minutes on stage. I think it was 7 minutes. You got 7 minutes on stage to show your wares, to provide a compelling demo to venture capitalists to gain funding. Everyone with me? And they were so excited about that because they had mortgaged the house and they were running out of funds. So they were incredibly excited by it. And they were like, but we've never hit a date in our lives, Bob. So they pulled me in this Agile cushion, like, we think, can this Scrum thing help us hit a date? And we want it to be our first sprint. I'm like, maybe not. Maybe you want to stay away from Agile and just pray. Do whatever you have been doing and pray, and maybe that's the best way to hit this demo date. But they convinced me that they wanted to do Scrum, so we started Scrum. So we went in and we did sprint planning, and we came out with a sprint goal. And the sprint goal was, someone guess, what do you think the sprint goal was? And they had one sprint to get to demo. They had 23 days. So this was a 23-day long sprint. Anyone, guess what the goal was? Provide a compelling demo, and compelling was the latch word. It was like, what the heck does that mean? But provide compelling content that we could demonstrate in 7 minutes that would generate funding. That's what they wanted to hang their hat on that. And we did sprint planning around that, and we had stories established, and we had tasks, and the gun went off, and they started the sprint. And when was the first change to the sprint plan? Anyone? When did the sprint plan change? Someone help me. Day one. It was like they looked at the story, they looked in the code, and they were like, crap, there's too many bugs in there. That will not demonstrate very well. They were like, we need to make an adjustment. So where did they look to make the adjustment? What did they measure the adjustment? What did the product ownership look to? kind of went back up to the goal and was like, okay, we need to shift compelling. we need something else. And the team looked there as well. And what I'm saying is this was a survival goal. And that goal, every day they encountered changes in their sprint plan. Every day they were moving the target, they were moving the tasks, and they were moving the stories. But the thing that rallied around them, that kept them on point, that kept them on direction was what? The goal. That goal kept them on track. To finish the story, and I don't know if it's a scrum, it's not, they could have failed as well, but thank goodness they got the funding. And they went to demo, and it was a compelling demo. And part of their sprint plan was practicing it, et cetera. So the goal drove quality aspects. It wasn't just feature aspects, it was quality aspects. So, second story, why are goals compelling? This different company, different person. This is John. John was an engineer on an Agile team, a Scrum team, at a company that was doing e-commerce work. And they were having some complex errors associated with some customer chargebacks. So this company would take customer inventory and then resell it on multiple channels. And what they were finding is there were some algorithmic errors that would cause them to make chargeback errors, and they would have to, as part of their SLA to their customers, these bugs were costing them money. Everyone with me? So every time that a customer would lose money, they would have to pay, so they had a direct payback effect to the customer. And John showed some initiative in the team. He was starting to lead. He says, I wonder if we can, by using ATDD, so acceptance tests, in this case we were using fitness, I wonder if we could use fitness to instrument and test some business logic to sort of finalize this. No one knew how the algorithms work. Can I use this testing, get into the business layer, and can I correct that? And it was a stretch as part of a sprint. So it was added to the sprint goal. And he's like, maybe we can try this. Maybe we can eradicate these. We didn't even know what they were. We just know that we knew that when the bugs surfaced, and we knew that the customers would charge us lots of money for them. So we knew there was an outlay. And in one sprint, John, just by instrumenting tests, he found 3 core issues that were costing us money and 5 potential issues that would have cost us money under other conditions, just by going through and defining the fitness tests. And this was initiative, and it was part of a stretch goal for that sprint. We demonstrated, I'll never forget, we demonstrated that. So he established a stretch goal with his product. So this was shared product ownership, taking refactoring to the extreme. And I remember when we did the sprint demo, the sprint review, the sprint demo of that code, we didn't just show features, but we showed the automation running. And I remember our CEO at the time, very young, very cocksure of himself, very overconfident, not very willing to share credit, not very willing to applaud or even show emotion. But I think I saw a tear come to his eye. I literally, when we were demonstrating this, and he clearly understood the business implications, but when he saw what the team had done from a stretch goaling perspective, he was just flabbergasted. And that was one of the wonderful aspects of Scrum and of transparency and of sprint reviews. The third example of goaling, why I think goaling is important, is there's a product owner that I know fairly well, very near and dear to my heart. We'll call him Rob. And Rob was putting together a series. He had a forecasted series of deliverables. This company wanted to recreate their message creation engine. And that wouldn't just fit into a single sprint. And it wouldn't just fit into a single release. It required vision and multi-release connectors, and multi-release thinking, and multi-release strategy. And Rob, to his credit, whether he knows it or not, I'm not sure he did this intentionally, but he had these innate values. He put together a series of sprint goals, but also he set the tone for the team of where they were going from release to release. And so for release 1, he established a minimal marketable feature set for entry to get it in the door. And this was a software as a service. So at the end of release 1, we were pushing to production. They were pushing to production. They were getting it in front of customers. It was being used. Release 2, he set the stage. Now that we're in the door, we need to what? We need to stabilize. We have a few, Houston, we have a few issues. A few, not quality issues, but feature, robustness issues. We need to stabilize the features. And he did a wonderful job of framing his backlog to the goals and communicating to the team, this is a stable, now we're focusing on stabilization. And then finally, in release 3, he talked about complexity. He talked about complex editing, talked about polish. These weren't even nice to have. These were differentiators. That's getting some more differentiators in there to really blow away the market. So he did a wonderful job via goals and via plans and via backlog of setting this tone. Everyone with me? Goals, really crucial. Guiding, in this case, in all of these cases, guiding the organization, not just the team. Do you like the picture? So grooming. I have this term, I don't know, anyone ever hear, how many people have heard the term backlog, grooming a backlog? It's not that many. So grooming, I haven't coined it, I don't know how widely used it is, but to me there's this notion, and I overload it, of grooming backlogs. So the care and feeding, one's care and feeding of backlogs. And I think they're volatile, I think they're organic. They're evolving things. According to my code and according to others, you see terms like you see icebergs, or you see pyramids that represent backlogs. And grooming is this ongoing activity where you're grooming very finely grained stories that are about to be executed, or you're grooming epics. You could be grooming a sprint, or like Rob in my past example, you're grooming a release. And you're changing your view, you're changing your lens and your view so that you're grooming at different levels, and you might be estimating stories, and part of grooming is breaking things down and providing connectors to what is the strategy? How are we gonna put this together? So I think there's a simple pattern of just simple backlog grooming, where a lot of teams just groom. They get into a room occasionally, they hope and pray that things just sort themselves out. They spend a little time on their backlogs. And then I think essential product ownership is this collaborative, as a village, you get together and there's active and congruent backlog grooming. It's very proactive, it's team-based. I'll give you an example. Testers are looking at the backlog and they're contributing stories to the backlog related to technical test debt, related to automation infrastructure. They're magically showing up. They're magically being justified to the business. Why do we need these stories that are related to technical debt? And we're contrasting that thread against feature threads, against minimal marketable features. How are we balancing that from a priority perspective? That would be more of the active part, an example of that. And we want to create that. I'm a dog lover, so I had to have almost every presentation I do, I have to fit in animals. And this was a picture I found that I just fell in love with. I have a dog. Our dogs are somewhere in between those two radical dimensions of the spectrum. I want to talk about grooming dynamics a little bit in Essential, and I'm going to give you some, I think what I characterize as anti-patterns to lead into patterns. So in this case, I am going to illustrate some anti-patterns. So another e-commerce company. It was actually the same e-commerce company that John was working at. Hope I didn't give that anything away there. The PO was incredibly well liked. His name is Max. Max was just wonderful. He was a wonderful conversationalist. He was an extrovert. He was wonderful to put in front of customers, great in front of clients, great in front of sales, a consummate sales guy. He could make you his friend in 5 or 10 minutes. And he was a great product owner from a personality perspective, great sense of humor. Team loved him, just absolutely loved Max. So the team was there to please him to a fault. And I was attending sprint planning with him on occasion in grooming. So this was mostly grooming and some sprint planning. So in a grooming session, I noticed we were estimating stories. Everyone familiar? So we're grooming and we're doing planning poker and we're throwing points and we're estimating stories. And the team would be looking, so they would throw, everyone would throw 13s. But Max would sadly, his little head would sort of bend down in his chair and the team would notice it. And then we'd have another round and the estimates would come down to 5s, right? So just by the saddening, everyone was watching all of his body language. And then he might cough. On occasion he would cough and it would drop down to a 3. And at this point he didn't have to say anything. And Max, to his credit, he wasn't trying to do this. The team was just so in tune. They really cared for him as a product owner that they were watching, they were driving some of their estimates. So deceiving, like Linda was talking about. They were self-deceiving. They were trying to please Max. And their hearts were in this place. God helped the team when he actually vocalized something where he said, I'm really uncomfortable with that estimate. I mean, you could take a 20-point epic or a 40-point epic, and it would actually not have time. It would have negative points associated with it. It would be done tonight, just to please Max. Healthy behavior, non-healthy behavior. What do you think? What do you want? Not so Max, and he was a consummate product owner, but he wasn't seeing this. He wasn't seeing this pleasing behavior, and the teams were disappointing him from an execution perspective. They were setting themselves up for failure. And I was talking to him as a coach, and I'm like, you really need to almost over-accentuate yourself and demand from the team quality. So instead of watch your body language, and be very careful about body language, about tone. And instead of even pushing on the business case, I said the team wants to please, by default, the team wants to give you 1.5 times what you asked for in a sprint. So what you want to do is accentuate, I think. Accentuate quality, accentuate doing it right, accentuate are the estimates correct, ask different questions. Please be cognizant of the power that you have of the team and get this grooming, get these estimates from what I think of as not very healthy to not very congruent, to a congruent estimation. And I think good, essential product owners understand that their teams, it's not just this Max relationship, and it's not just pleasing Max, we want to please the business. Everyone with me? We hire professionals. We come in the door, I think by default, Linda said it, we come in the door optimistic. We come in the door can-do. We come in the door overcommitted. And I think good essential product owners sort of don't push too hard and are very sensitive to that. Another story, a leadership influence, Todd in this case, was a startup. He was a CTO of a small startup. He was the founder, he was an architect, he was a programmer, he was a wonderful technician. He had gone to Carnegie Mellon, wonderful university for software engineers. Todd was a character, very flamboyant character, and he wanted to go to Scrum. And he wanted his team to go to Scrum. And I remember I was helping coach them, and we were teaching them in our first planning session, our first few planning poker sessions. And Todd was a contributor, so Todd had multiple hats. Todd was part Scrum Master, he was part product owner, he was part individual team member, he was part architect, and we were with the team doing grooming, and again, the team was looking at Todd, but they weren't sort of by default moving their estimates down. They were looking for permission. Everyone with me? So no one would point to anything unless Todd gave like the high sign, and he had multiple ways of doing that. He would tap his foot. He would look up at the ceiling. Everyone would look. So there would be a round robin getting permission. Is that the right? I think it's a 3. And then is Todd, his eyebrow's like, no, it's a 10. Is that the right direction? No, I'm going in the wrong direction. Damn it. It's a half. It's a 0. That's the right direction. And Todd in this case was he was overloaded in his role. And in this case, he was very hard influencing the team. And he wasn't blatantly doing it, but he understood planning poker. In his defense, he really embraced the notion of the team, and he wanted the team to be empowered. But at the same time, he was a micromanager, and he was an architect, and he couldn't get himself out, if that makes sense from everyone. He couldn't get himself out of the technology. One of the things we did then is we literally kicked him out of estimation, if that makes sense, in a polite way, because he was paying the bills and he was the founder, but we really influenced him to get out of that so we could get better plans and better estimates on the part of the team, and we designated some surrogates for him. So you want to be careful grooming dynamics, keep them congruent, keeping them village-based, keeping it very active. So some active backlog grooming ideas, bring goals and stories to the table, but be open to change them. In Max's case, listen more, and in Todd's case, listen more, listen very actively. So be an active listener, not an active talker. Watch your body language. Watch all of your stuff. Presuppose that the team is being overzealous. Presuppose that the team is being overly optimistic. That is a common pattern. So we don't want that. Don't negotiate, collaborate. So don't twist folks' arms. Organic explorations of scope and options as you get closer to execution. So in grooming, I think it's very healthy to look for trade-offs, to look for those organic explorations as part of the grooming process. Probably not at the epic level, but probably when you're getting closer to execution. You want the team to engage. I think it's a very healthy team who's thinking about how are we going to put the piece parts together. As a story is moving down the line, getting ready for execution, how are we going to put that together from a design perspective, from an architecture perspective? Explore execution dynamics. The team should be thinking about how, again, these piece parts, how are we going to put it together? Who's going to work on what? I think that's fair game to start thinking about who might be the right person to work on that. Do we have a skill set gap in raising those issues? Look at deployment, look at risk. I think you want to apply pressure on value flow. So instead of applying pressure on content and applying pressure on dates or time boxes or how much can we do, put pressure on value flow. Are we doing the most valuable things first? Have we delivered? Are we planning on delivering the highest priority feature first? Are we working on a minimal marketable feature set or a theme that hangs together from a demonstration perspective? Are we working on quality and are we working a sustainable pace, or are we overcommitting as a team? And I think the product owner, again, has a responsibility to their team to talk about quality attributes, pace attributes, and things like that. I'd like you to remember that the backlog is a shared construct that sort of, in my mind, it represents workflow. It's not just a series of features that need to be slapdash together, but and I'll talk about it later, I think there's multiple threads through it. And you want to be thinking about workflow. But teams need to be able to see that big picture and flow from where you're at to where do you want to go, where you're going. They need to see those connectors. You want to visit it often. You want to intensely visit as a group and individually. We get a lot of traction out as everyone. I don't know if people are familiar with the term like a research spike, a user story spike. How many people are familiar with that term? A story, to me, it's a story that represents research rather than demonstrable work. It represents knowledge. We're figuring something out. We have a hard story. It may be an epic, and we don't even know how to attack it. I think teams don't throw enough, I use the term throwing enough spikes into their backlogs so that they're doing enough look ahead, they're doing enough research. I have a feeling, an internal dynamic or a metric that like 20% of the stories in a given backlog are probably spikeable, meaning the complexity. You probably have 20% of your stories that are very complex, that need a little pre-work. And I'm not giving you a license for waterfall behavior. I'm not talking about big design up front, but I'm saying I would rather us do a little bit of grooming in advance on a story to compose it properly than dive in and realize in the middle of a sprint when we've committed to that story that we don't know what we're doing. We had no pre-work around how do we attack that. Another pattern I want to talk about is related to release planning. So I think the simple pattern that a lot of teams do is a lot of teams do release planning. And I'll use the term there, if you've heard blitz planning, the XP folks, the extreme programming folks talked about release planning. There's end-to-end planning. There's a variety of story mapping. Jeff Patton has it's not really a planning technique per se, but a behavior or a UI behavior visualization technique called story mapping. But all of these techniques have this notion of planning releases, not just diving in and sprinting yourself to death without a view beyond the current sprint, but putting a series of connected things together to nail a release, to hit a customer-facing release point. So I think that simple pattern is some folks adopt that. I don't see it enough. I like to amplify that pattern, and I want you to think in terms of multi-threaded look ahead. That it's a very dynamic look ahead in your backlog. This is the tapestry that I was talking about before. I really like this metaphor for the backlog. I want you to be thinking of your backlogs as a tapestry with threads that go through it. And it's not, so very often I see a tapestry, backlog tapestries that just have features going through them. Everyone with me? There's a feature set that sort of traverses a backlog. Not that that's bad. In many cases, a worst thread is they're disconnected features. So at any point, the sprint demo would be a set of disconnected features. Yes, they're done, but the customer scratches their head, and it's like, well, what did I just get? If you delivered that to me tomorrow for real and I was using it, how will I use that? I love everything that you've discreetly done, but where's the beef? How do you connect the dots for that? So themes, collections of stories would be part of that. So features is a thread. Value should be a thread where you're considering value. How are we providing, are we doing valuation of stories, and how are we connecting value? Not just high priority, but value priority of things to our constituents, to our customers. You're thinking of architecture. Have we looked ahead enough from an architectural perspective? Are we getting too much rework? If you notice that you're getting lots and lots of rework, where at the end of a sprint you're like, or in the middle of a sprint you're like, crap, we should have designed that. Oh gosh, that doesn't, now we have to extend that. We're refactoring an awful lot based on feature implementation. I would argue you may not have looked ahead enough. Now I don't want zero rework. I mean, then you would be doing BDUF. You'd be doing that big design, big architecture up front. I'm not asking for that, but there's a counter element to BDUF, which is this high degrees of rework that really impact the efficiency of your sprint. So you want to be thinking about architecture and design and looking ahead and process and quality and testing. And when you get close to a release point, we're going to do a release. We're going to do 3 sprints, then we're going to push to production. I would argue that the backlog elements close to that push to production might include a regulated traceable regression test. It might include a security test if that's relevant in your domain. Everyone with me? And that should show up, that activity should show up in the thread in the backlog if you're really doing that. So deployment, dependencies, something that we have huge challenges with, I think, at iContact historically, and something that we're getting much better at is managing our dependencies. And it's linked to our release planning. It's linked to our dependency mapping. And not only do we plan with dependencies in mind, we even have a notion of story readiness. So a story with dependencies doesn't enter a sprint unless those dependencies have actually been mapped effectively and committed to. But we're mapping them through the system and we're mapping them to deployment. So dependency thread, feedback, customer, tempo. The threads are guiding it. It's the tapestry is this metaphor for it's not just a simple list. It is all of your activity related to getting high value, high quality things out to your clients. What are some unhealthy backlog patterns I've seen to sort of contrast against the tapestry? POs drop off a list and walk away. They brainstorm it themselves, or they get it, they have a story brainstorming workshop and then they just blindly list whatever the team did. It could be in priority order or not. They overload priority. Everything's a priority 1. If you've ever seen that, or there's multiples. I see backlogs like this all the time where they try to fool me. There's a spreadsheet and there's 1, and then they have 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, and then 2A through Z. And they're looking at me and they're like, Bob, that is not, there is only one priority 1. But I'm like, what about this column? No, don't look at that column. There's literally just 1. And they're overloading it, and they're fooling themselves, and so it goes back to Linda's point of congruency. Don't fool yourself. Don't lie to yourselves. Dependencies trivialized or pretending that they're not there. You ignore them. Oh, we'll prioritize. We'll do planning poker. We'll order these things in work. We'll drive them into our teams, and we're not managing priority. We're not managing dependencies effectively. We're not even talking about them until they flame. Clearly you can't ignore dependencies until they flame on in sprints, and then you're having failures. Simplistic testing assumed. The view in many domains, if you can do all your testing in the sprint, that's great. But if that's too simplistic a model and you have other things, for example, a full regression test, or you have regulatory testing or system testing or third-party integration testing, you can't do it in the sprint, or you don't have high degrees of automation, then your backlog reflects that. With testing activities that cover that test debt. You don't trivialize deployment. I see backlogs. What I mean by deployment, pushing it to servers. There's work associated. There may be checklists. There may be trials. When we get ready to push to production, we're a software as a service company. It's not free. It doesn't magically happen. There's checklists. There's configuration files that we have to deploy. There's configuration checks we have to make. Someone needs to do that. Healthy postures in creating your backlog. Here's some healthy postures. I want to get optimistic again. You allow the solution to emerge just in time. You have that mindset of just in time. Keep it simple. Keep things simple. One of the things, sort of a corollary to what Linda was talking about, we're overly optimistic. How many people, did everyone attend Linda's keynote this morning? She was talking, I think in general rule, as technology, we're very, very optimistic. I also think lately I've been talking about KISS, and I've been seeing lots of complex solutions in a variety of places where I've gone. So I also think we have a tendency to what? I think we love complexity for its own sake. I think we love to attack problems with really, because it's interesting, it's sexy, it keeps us engaged. The team morale goes way through the roof, because this is a hard problem here. And you want to attract that. I think it's harder to get these just-in-time, really simple solutions. You want to look ahead, but it's a balancing act, but not too far, and you want to iterate. But you do want to look ahead. You want to look down your backlog. You want to spend some time. One of the things about backlog grooming I think people miss is Schwaber talked about it in that Black Book, or one of those early books. He talked about investing in backlog grooming. I don't know if he called it backlog grooming, maybe management or something, but managing, taking activity around the product backlog. He talked about investing 10% of sprint time. How many, you recall that? He talked about a 10% investment of time, of the team's time to backlog grooming. And I don't know if teams invest that. And I don't think 10% is the magic number, but it's a significant number is the point. So what he was alluding to is the backlog is your planning element. The backlog is your execution element. The backlog is your risk element, and I think it's really important. I think folks don't get that. Quality debt recovery should result in stories. So I want to see refactoring stories. You want to see, and you want the team to present. We actively encourage our team members at Eye Contact to put stories in the backlog. And I actively encourage them. I'm like, it's not going to be a free ride. You're not just going to get it there. You're going to have to present a business case to your product owner. You're going to have to talk about what's in it for the business. What did you just solve and why? And they're like, oh my God, that's a lot of work. I said, that's good work. If it's worth fixing, I think it's worth making the case. It's worth understanding and being able to present that business case. What is that trade-off to your product owner? For goodness sakes, they're a member of your team. They're representing the overall capacity of the team. So make those cases. Thoughtful workflow matters. So trust your team's input and get your team's input. And then think in terms of delivery to your customer and done. So some healthy postures in that grooming process. Another pattern, a simple pattern, and I see some threads. I'm becoming a tapestry guy. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to retire and start doing needlepoint or something. But I see threads through some of these patterns. So simple pattern in this case is work with the team. I think the essential pattern, and most product owners get that. They get that it's a team function. They get it as a team behavior. But the essential pattern to me is cementing a creative partnership between the PO and the team, where we are one, we are partners, we have each other's backs, we understand our roles. The product owner starts understanding testers and how they think. Why? Not to replace them, not to become a tester, but to understand they're a team member. Sports analogies, I hate them at conference, but I'll bring them. I think linemen understand what quarterbacks do and what running backs do to some degree. They have a role, but they also holistically understand the interplay of the roles. And they respect the interplay of those roles. And I think the quarterback, so the leader, and the product owner in this case, I think would be synonymous with sort of that quarterback, fundamentally understands strengths and weaknesses of their team and the roles themselves and the interplay, and how do we drive that to be successful? And that's this creative partnership I'm talking about here. I want to talk about Link. Link was a product owner in another e-commerce company. I've spent a lot of time in e-commerce related, and I'm generalizing the companies. Link was a wonderful product owner in this company. And what he would do, and this was before I wrote the book, so I'm watching product owners. I behaved as a product owner, but I was also watching them. I was looking for good ones, and I was looking for not so good. And I found lots of not so good ones, but I found some good ones. And Link was one of those good ones, and I was watching. I was watching how he conducted himself, and I was watching his behaviors, and I was trying to learn from him about the model of product ownership and what the balance of the role was. And about every 2 months, Link would bring his team into a room, for about a half day. He'd bring pizza into the room, and he'd talk about the competitive landscape for his area of the product. He would bring up competition. He would bring up competitive studies. He would put up slides and slides talking about the number one competitor. He would talk about the number two. He would talk about feature and functional sets and trade-off, how we competed, what were our strengths related to their strengths, what were our weaknesses related to their strengths from a competitive landscape. He would talk about strategy, what his perception is, where those companies are going. Our number one competitor, where was that company, where did he think they were going to be in a year? What did he perceive they were going to be working on? What was he basing that on? History. He saw some research in an obscure magazine or something, or an article, and he was providing this leadership. He would get dialogue with the team. He would basically try to share, I think, a big part of his role, his strategic role. He would take them from tactical execution to strategy, and he was trying to sort of get this mind share with them. You know, that wisdom of crowd things that Lee talked about this morning. And in this case, it's, I guess, a wise or a valuable wisdom of crowds. And he was trying to get the whole team to understand where, not so much where the backlog was going, but where we needed to be going. A lot of folks looked at him like he was silly. And it's like, why are you wasting the time? Those people should be typing code. They should be typing tests. They should be writing user stories. Gosh darn it, you're wasting time. That was a pervasive view. How many people think Link was wasting his time? And he would do it about every two. What was he trying to get? Anyone? What was he trying to do? Guess. But have it emerge instead of, you're right, one aspect of it is to emerge a common goal. And he didn't know. Now, could he have created Link was great. Link was a great product manager. So there was no gap in Link's ability to be able to say, here, this is my vision for the future. But he was trying to evoke the team. He was trying to pull the team into his world. So you're right, one aspect was to create a shared vision. Anyone else? What else was he sure. So what he's saying is each team member is viscerally to drive it home, to get that team-based, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but get that team-based, get it in your belly of this is where we're going. And I'm aligning with that. You're absolutely right. That team was wonderfully driven. And yes, they did sprint goals, but they almost didn't have to. These sessions, the team was almost self-goaled as a result of this. I cut you off, someone else. Shared passion. He shared his passion. Another interesting thing he did is he shared his challenges with the team. He's like, you know what, we're in a dogfight. We're in a dogfight. This is a competitive landscape. And he was on the spot from a business perspective to provide that direction. And the team was there. So the team rallied around Link. They're like, yeah, not only was it a competitive landscape, but like, we've got your back, man. We've got it. And there was some creativity over sprints as part of that, creative solutions. Link would throw a story in, and it was very often the case where a team, no, you don't want to do that. That is not what we want to do. What we want to do is this plus this and leverage something we did last year and glue those things together, and we'll nail the competition with that aspect. And you know what? What we thought was 40 points is 5 points. And very often it would be 40 points, but the point was they were looking at the landscape and coming up with very creative and dynamic solutions. And I think a big part of that is a credit to his team, it was a credit to the leadership, but it was a credit to this dynamic. So, shared ownership, wisdom of the crowds, increasing this team's value so that they understood it wasn't just a stream of here, implement this, code this up. Shut up, code it, test it, get it out the door. They were understanding the big picture, and he pulled them into that. And they produced KISS solutions wherever possible because they had the competitive landscape in place. He would actually even invite them. We had ops plans. This is an extension of that, but he would present to the executive leadership of the company quarterly. And This was separate from the team, where he would talk about game plans and forecasts and what we've accomplished versus what we're planning on accomplishing from a long-term perspective. And he had a neat habit. He would invite a few team members to that session. And they would quietly sit as chickens in the back, and they would observe the commitments that were being made. They were observing this dynamic of the business was being very aggressive and what Link was being held to task for. And that helped with the partnership as well. Round trip exposure. So he provided this ability to, and I think in general, it's a very good activity that you want to allow the team to explore as a part of product ownership. Allow the team to experiment, to stretch, to fail. I'll say it again, to fail. Proudly sharing failures, stretch points. I don't know if it's not failure that's the point, but we pass or fail our sprints at eye contact. And many folks look at me like I've got two heads. And it's like, you're silly. But if we don't meet a sprint goal, we will look at a sprint and the commitment the team make, and we will say that the team failed. And we don't fire anyone, we don't take money from anyone, we don't take their children, we don't send spies out their houses to their homes. We simply look at, the team, and it's not an individual, so testers don't fail, and developers don't fail, and the product owner doesn't fail, and the scrum master doesn't fail. The team failed. And then the team, in the retrospective, looks at what do we do about it? I actually want failures. I want the teams to be stretching. I want us to be trying new things. I have a conversation with our scrum masters, if they may even be watching, not that long ago. I said, we're not failing enough. We're not stretching enough. We're not stretching the boundaries. We're not trying new things the way we should be. And I really want that. So always draw learning from your retrospectives. Know when to push and know when to pull. I think the product ownership can set the tone for this, can enable it, can enable that exploration, that emergent discovery that's so powerful in Agile. And then share, this is what Link did beautifully, he shared his pressures in a positive way, the business pressures and his personal pressures with the team to motivate the team. Do developers share their pressures with the product owner? They're a member of the team. I think the answer is yes. Do the testers? Yes. So, and very often we look at the scrum master and the product owner as being maybe not human roles. They're human roles. They're parts of the team. Allow them to express, hey, what's tough? What's not tough in my role? Let's help each other out as a team. Last simple pattern. I think it's last. I think I saved built to last for last. I hope there was a method to that. Simple pattern is, of course, quality. Read an Agile book. Of course we build in quality. Of course, of course, of course. The essential pattern is, I think a lot of folks skip quality. I think we still short shrift quality too much in Agile teams. I think we give it lip service. I think building quality in and building it right the first time is really, really hard. And I think product ownership plays an incredibly important part in how do we build it right the first time. So build it right, keep it clean, no matter the cost. I know I'm being extreme here, okay? So I know there's balance. I know there's business balance. But build it right, keep it clean, and try to have the view of no matter the cost. The picture. I'm very fond of the picture on the right. There's a pile of steamy stuff there. So we want to avoid the steamy stuff, if that makes sense to everyone. Who decides on quality? Of course, quality isn't a simple pattern. It's sort of a facade. I wanted to share this quote from Jim Copeland. I borrowed it. I'm paraphrasing it. From a Scrum Alliance leadership, there's a conversation list, a mail list. I think it's a Yahoo group for the Scrum Alliance. And about 2 months ago, about the time where I was wrapping up the slides, opportunities. Sometimes I get blessed with just things that really inspire me. And about that time, there was a conversation about value and backlogs. And he had this quote, and I'll just quickly read it. Value doesn't matter when examining technical debt. So there was a debate around prioritization and value, and then valuation of how do you evaluate technical debt. And there was a lot of, well, you don't. Features trump technical debt. Does that make sense, everyone? That was the gist of the discussion. And Jim came back, he said, rather, so no, don't think of it that way. Value doesn't matter when examining technical debt. Rather, that cleaning up after yourself transcended the normal determination of business value and was simply an inherent part of delivering software. Right? And that's not a license to do whatever the heck we want, but it is a license to do what? To do it well. that we're not getting into evaluation debate. Sometimes we get into product owners have to enable doing the right thing. Everyone with me? It's beyond features. The inalienable right to build good infrastructure. That decision-making wasn't for the business side, the PO, but instead resides within the team. Now, the PO is a member of that team, but you're fostering that decision in the team. I think a lot of product owners don't understand the investment, don't listen to their teams well enough, deeply enough to grok technical debt and to grok what the team is sharing with them from a technical debt, from a refactoring perspective, both from a development point of view and from a testing point of view, testing, infrastructure, test automation. So listen to your team and ask the right questions. And to the degree that you can, take these business value discussions out of play when it comes to technical debt. Trust your team. Technical debt. It's intentional versus the unintentional. So we don't have the time. Intentional technical debt is we hack, we skip it, we know better, right? We don't have the time. You're simply gold plating. I don't trust you. Or you're overreacting. All of you are overreacting. Skip that. We have features to build. Suck it up. Let's just get this product out the door. Then there's the unintentional mistakes, mergers and acquisitions, poor design choices, skill gaps. There's the two of them. Unintentional is unintentional. We can't do much about that. We can train skills, we can do inspections, we can do some things about that, but it's the intentional debt that I'm poking at from a product ownership, from a village perspective, that I hope to inspire you to go back and reevaluate technical debt and reevaluate your investment. Warning signs and terms, so hacking. Whenever I hear the term in a grooming session, and I'll hear this term often, probably every grooming session, someone will say, well, it's 5 points. I can do that story in 5 points if I hack it. Anyone ever hears a similar ish? Replace it with another term. I can do it. And that's not shame on that individual at all, but it's the cultural, it's how we're setting the tone. It's, are we being truthful with ourselves? Are we challenging ourselves? But whenever I hear that, I'm like, okay, that's the answer for hacking. I want the answer for what? For doing it well. I'll talk in terms of being proud. When you go home tonight, when you look in the mirror, will you look at yourself, or will you be pleased with what you see based on the technical decisions you made today? And if you're embarrassed, then go back and requote that work. Don't build in that debt. And differentiate debt for new things versus breaking down historical backlog debt. But attack the debt. So there are these warning signs. Crufty, I hear the term at work all the time. That's crufty code. Okay, well, and I've heard that. I've seen comments in code. Someone should really refactor that. 2 years ago, someone wrote a comment that was, we should really refactor that. 2 years later, that comment is there and that crufty code is still there. We need to do better than that. And product ownership in this village and trusting the team, not just, oh, they're just overreacting. Oh, it'll be no, listen to the team and start beating down that technical debt. I'll talk about Mark. It's an anti-pattern. Mark worked at a company, and he was a director of R&D. Every year, the company had a code base, about 12-year-old code base. Every year, he would annually put together a presentation for senior management. It was a wonderful presentation. He got into the habit of reusing the slides year over year. But he would talk about technical debt, where are we? And he would present this wonderful business case for what we need to change. He would prioritize the areas of focus. He and some architects would dutifully craft, and it was very good work. It was excellent work. They really nailed it. They weren't talking about re-architecting everything. They were talking about attacking their technical debt. Because year over year, their maintenance curves were getting longer. Their ability to implement features were getting harder. The team was struggling with maintenance. And he would take this presentation to the senior leadership and make the case. And what do you think the reactions were? Anyone guess? Shot down. It was like a little biplane, and they would do that, and it would putter up to leadership, and the little plane, and it was the little plane that could, and it was wonderfully thoughtful, and he would take it, and then it would be shot down, and they would do no technical debt for the year. But then Mark, to his credit or detriment, the next year, in January, because it's budgeting, we were planning, right? The little plane would pop up on the surface again with a revised deck. So they would think they were thoughtful, and it would putter up to leadership. And it would be shot down again for 10 years. That company now going forward is struggling with their financial viability from the point of view that they have now created a mass of debt that they can't really, it's affected their competitive advantage of competing in their marketplace. And debt is a part of that. It's pay me now or pay me later. So I bring up the manifesto for software craftsmanship as something to think about, because I think craftsmanship, both at the, I'd like to think of product ownermanship or craftsmanship at a product owner level and at a Scrum Master level. Craftsmanship matters. So I want you to think about that. So wrapping up, I have about 10 minutes left, I think. Wrapping up, I just want to quickly review. The patterns that we talked about is it takes a village to own the backlog. I want you to think about leading with goals. I want you to think about active and congruent and investment-oriented. Backlog grooming. Multi-threaded look ahead. Think tapestry. Think, how am I balancing the quality thread against the refactor thread, against the feature evolution thread, against whatever other threads are important in your context. I want you to cement as a PO or foster your POs. If you're not a PO in here, if you're a Scrum Master, if you're in another role, go back and shove this presentation under the noses of your product owners and raise the bar and cement that creative partnership between PO and team. You'll get tremendous bang for the buck out of that. And then build it right and keep it clean no matter the cost. So with that, I think I can stick a fork in me, and I am done, and I will take a few questions if there are any. There's a mic there.
Have you seen any patterns or anti-patterns around the definition of done that you would like to share?
I think I'll simplify it. I'll simplify it to, I think the biggest anti-pattern is trivializing the need for done and then measuring to done. And one of the things I talk about at these conferences a lot, which is a complement to this talk, is doneness. Folks heard me on Tuesday. I was rambling about 4 levels of doneness and how important that is. And you heard me talk about that in the goaling section a little bit. I think that's a fundamentally important part. Is that alignment of those goals to me toward doneness, and then measuring to doneness and committing to that doneness. So the anti-pattern is, I think, short shrifting it, trivializing it, not doing it. Or doing it initially and then falling away from it. Another anti-pattern is doing it well in the beginning, but then thinking, getting full of ourselves as an Agile team and thinking that we don't need to measure, it's inherent. We're just getting done by default and not measuring back to done. So I've seen those anti-patterns, and the pattern to me is just holding. Doneness is crucial. And I think folks, you hear that at the conferences a lot. It's absolutely a crucial part of the dynamic of the fabric of Agile. Another question? Any other questions?
Thanks for the great talk. You had talked about technical and quality, really, and asking the right questions. You sprinkled in a few examples, such as, has the code been reviewed, architect review. Can you provide some more examples of the right questions to ask to your team when evaluating the quality of the code?
I think it's not just from a product owner. I had a session back at iContact not that long ago, and I shared with our C-level staff questions they should be asking to inspire the team. And it's not just, are we there yet? Are we done yet? Are we done yet? Are we done yet? Or, is it date-centric or scope-centric? So I think things like burn-down directions, asking inquisitive questions about burn-down, burn-up, asking questions about doneness. Is doneness still relevant? Let's say you go from back-end code to front-end code. Doneness actually might need to adjust based on the types from team to team or what we're trying to do. The business case, from a requirement perspective, you may have high security. So let's say you're doing a backlog that has security implications, and you might want to adjust your doneness. And so questions around, have we done security testing? Have we done sufficient performance testing? Have I provided you sufficient acceptance tests for that story or that feature? So shifting your question landscape around sort of challenging the team around, are they doing the right activities? Ask even, did you do a code review for that? If it's something that had a spike associated with it, meaning a complex user story, it is fair game to talk to the team about, can I see the design? Did you do a design? Could we see the design? Is the design on the wiki? Did you share that with someone else? So I think those questions have it's not just the artifacts, but it's the implication that you're making in the team that something else is important other than what? Getting stuff out the door of a time box. And it has huge ripple effects, I think, in the team of what we ask and what we amplify. And we don't have to ask about time and scope. I really think it's self-evident. Teams are driven. You hire good people, and they understand that it's a competitive landscape. Any other questions?
I have one, Bob. I have one from the virtual audience.
Okay.
Would you clarify refactoring? When is it applicable, and when is it not?
I actually think so. So refactoring, to me, clarify, refactoring is cleaning up after oneself in a code base. So something that was done poorly. So cleaning up, refactoring code, redesigning test cases, redesigning test frameworks. So it's not just cleaning up unit tests. I often get the question from our teams, we refactored some code, but we broke half of our unit tests. Is that part of the refactoring? And the answer in the audience is, yes. So cleaning up the unit tests is probably part of the refactoring. So I think that is refactoring. When is it applicable? I think it's always applicable. It's a question as to how much. And I think what I recommend is make it visible, make it transparent, get it on the backlog, and drive those discussions around refactoring relative to features, relative to competition. We're getting some wonderful traction back at iContact now at a C level. How do I frame this? Our CEO attended an all-hands meeting for our R&D staff yesterday, and he was demanding that we do more refactoring. And he was asking and giving us, he's like, I want you guys to do more refactoring because I'm seeing benefit in cleaning up things with our speed to delivery. And I wasn't there to be there for that event, but that's the sort of thing. So it's not just the refactoring, it's being an evangelist to make make the benefit of that transparent to the organization. So I think it's always applicable. It's just a question of how much, and trust the team to make those balanced decisions. Anything else? I really want to thank all of you for the time. Oh, one more? I think these slides are on, this question was, are the slides available? I think the slides are on the CD. And if not, if someone wants a PDF or something, if you don't like the format, you can drop an email to me. I'm on LinkedIn, etc. I meant what I said with Lee early on. I'm very active in the community, so I think the Agile community is a wonderful place to be, and people try to help each other. And that's a part of what I enjoy about the community. Any other questions? You guys rock. I want to thank you for the time.
Bob, thanks so much. Lunchtime now, and we'll reconvene at 12:45. Have a good afternoon. Excellent.